Good afternoon, everyone. ESBR Boxing here. You join myself, Elliot Grigg, with my esteemed colleague Gregory Doyle. Both of us wearing coats, not because it's cold, but in my case, a black coat because it's a dark day, and we've heard some controversial news in the world of boxing. Depending on which way you look at it, I suppose, and that is that Connor Benn is to be reinstated and returned to the WBC rankings after they've deemed that his highly elevated consumption of eggs was possibly a reasonable explanation for his failed drugs test. They were saying, there's no conclusive evidence that he intentionally or deliberately ingested the banned prohibited substance permethrin. So there we are, Greg. I've just outlined it there for in a minute or less for people, but I'm going to go straight to you. We've obviously just heard this news. This is currently breaking across news outlets at the moment. What's your initial reaction to the news, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elliot. I don't find it too groundbreaking because what the WBC have decided is not what the British Boxing Board of Control are going to decide. I think that could it be an explanation, possibly, but I think once you've had these things found in your system, um, it's difficult because I think that we spoke about this recently. I think you need a high level of eggs in your system for this to be the case. I think that I think it's really nothing. It just basically means that if he wants to fight for anything to do with the WBC, it's fine. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still a bigger case that needs to come to a conclusion.
No, you made the valuable distinction there. Actually, I was picking up on obviously the high level first. I think it was calculated that you'd need to have eaten 30 plus eggs a day for some time to have
Yeah,
the levels that he was found with, not once, I believe, but twice. But you made the distinction there, the valuable distinction there between the WBC. This is WBC, obviously, they're talking about reinstating into their rankings, but the British Board of Boxing Control, the BBBOC, has not yet done that. Do you think that they will? Is it your gut instinct that they will take the similar approach? There's obviously been discussions previously around other fighters that maybe have bigger wallets than the BBOC, and
yeah.
therefore have just kind of threaten them with legal action that they can't ill afford to what they can ill afford, frankly. Do you think that'll happen here? Do you see them bowing down, or do you see them staying true and sticking fast to their guns in this instance?
Yeah, it's a good question, Elliot, because I smell something not quite right about it. I think it wouldn't surprise me that now that he's got the WBC's backing, I think the British Boxing Board of Control, I think they want extra evidence, and I don't think that extra evidence has been given to them. So it would not surprise me one bit to see that this all goes quiet in Britain for maybe about the next year. It goes and has maybe a bout or two in America or elsewhere, and he comes back like nothing's happened and he fights in this country. But I think now to protect him, I think this will be. And I'm very much innocent until really proven guilty, but I think now they've got the ammunition that they need to say Connor Benn's innocent. We're going to go and box him here, let things die down in this country, but the people won't forget. But I think time will pass, Elliot, and I think that's when he'll be brought back to fight in this country.
Now that is very interesting. You say obviously about the they do want the extra evidence, but I think Matchroom were famous. Conor Benn was famous, I suppose, for something. What was it, 270-page dossier, which I
Yeah,
think has got enough evidence to clear him. So I don't know how many supplementary pages they need. But as you mentioned, to be perfectly honest, there as well, I was going to touch on that. Do you think you've obviously mentioned, and I actually agree with you when you were talking about maybe taking him over to Dubai or to somewhere else, to America to
yeah,
fight, and where he can be licensed, so it'll still be lucrative with Conor Benn's name associated with it. But do you think that the wider, like you said, like it might die down over a certain period of time? Do you think? Well, let's take two different groups. Let's take boxing, I suppose, fans,
hmm
British boxing fans as one, and then the kind of, I suppose, the kind of fellow fighters, fellow pundits, so people that are kind of more in the inner circle of boxing. Do you think either of those groups will forgive Conor Benn for this? Um, do you think it would be one of those things where it's kind of openly stated that it's openly understood that he's kind of done something he shouldn't have done, essentially? Or do you think in time that both will forgive, or one forgive and maybe one not forgive? Just give us your impressions of that, please.
yeah. Of course, mate. I think in the back of my mind tells me people will always remember, but it's probably going to be more hardcores that will remember, whether that's boxers or boxing fans. So many fighters in this country that things have happened with that have just kind of fell under the radar and people don't mention again. For example, your favourite fighter, Dillian White. We all know that I think he failed a test, didn't he? And that barely even gets mentioned anymore. this is quite high profile because it's happened fairly recently, and everyone was disappointed that probably one of the biggest fights that this country's ever had. I mean, Chris Eubank, it didn't go ahead, so that's made the reaction angrier. I think people will always remember, and I think it might be used against them in press conferences and things, but I think it's just the way life goes, Elliot. I think in time, these things will all kind of quieten down and it will go back to natural order. But I think because of how high profile this was, I think it will take time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you as well. So let me just well, obviously we are shocked, and I expect possibly some booing to happen if he was to fight in the UK
Yeah,
anytime soon. But let's just talk about briefly then his next fight. Say he does come back. Obviously now that he's been cleared by the WC, it's probably as likely that he'll fight at some point this year.
yeah,
Whether it will be in the coming months, whether it be a spring, whether it be summer, whether it be autumn, whenever. If you're
yeah,
matching him now, you're Eddie Hearn, you're promoting him, you've got matchmakers, etc. There, you taking him back into a sort of easy fight? You taking him abroad? Like where? Just sort of map out the next couple of fights because obviously Conor Benn was talking about fighting Eubank Jr. There was other big fights around in his
mhm,
division as well that people were talking about making potential world title shots, etc. How would you match
yeah.
the next sort of two or three fights for Conor Benn coming back after his layoff?
Yeah, that's a really good question because you need to think about where Connor Benn is mentally after all of this going on and get him back in and get him active. I've read a lot of quotes lately, and I don't know how true they are, that Eddie Hearn's topping Pacquiao's team, which that really surprised me because Pacquiao retired and things. But I think you bring him back against maybe a good level British opponent. It's hard to say who I would put him in with at 147 or 154. Maybe even somebody like a Sam Eggington, someone like that. Just get him active again. And then I would be putting him in with somebody like Kavaliauskas because that will really tell him where he is in world class levels. Because guys like Virgil Ortiz, Terence Crawford, etc., these are the only type of guys to beat these types of fighters. And if Conor Benn is going to get to the very top, I think he needs a bit of an acid test. But I would maybe put him in with someone who's fringe world title level in Britain, someone who's competed that he's expected to bowl over a little bit just to get his energy, his confidence and things back up. But it's a hard question, Elliot, and it's a really good question because where is he going to box? Because I don't think it's going to be this country. So it could be anybody anywhere.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you. 'Cause I think as well, there's a sense not only of testing him like where he is physically, where he's testing where he is mentally, but also
Yeah,
testing the public's reaction to him. Like you don't want to throw him obviously into a kind of British level fight in Britain and he comes out and gets hammered, and so
yeah,
everyone's sort of rooting for Eggington equally. So yeah, so
yeah.
it is definitely a difficult one. But I think yeah, I think it's well, Greg. We'll finish it here. But I just wanted to say as well that I think it's obviously it is news that's going to rock the sort of boxing world at the moment. We didn't even necessarily expect this. I think everyone kind of tacitly understood that maybe Ben was potentially already observing a ban without necessarily coming out and saying so. But the news that he is obviously being sort of welcomed back into the WBC rankings in that way is still quite shocking and surprising, given, as you said, the high levels of banned substance in his system and the way it's played out. With lawyers and dossiers and various other things. It just, like you said, it doesn't smell right, doesn't look right. It doesn't even sound right. Any senses I've got to think about this, they're saying this isn't right. But yeah, thank you very much for your time today. And I suppose we'll keep an eye on this situation. No doubt with the ESPR boxing, we'll be bringing you the latest and news on it as it unfolds. But thank you very much, Greg, and thank you very much, guys, for watching.
Thanks for having me, Elliot.